From November 30th to 12th of December, COP28 brought together 84,000 people, including delegates from all 199 parties, to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, to action meaningful change to tackle the ever-worsening climate crisis. 2023 has been the hottest year on record, with countries across the world facing devastating disasters induced by changing weather patterns and rising temperatures, only reinforcing the need for wide-ranging interventions to protect our planet. For countries disproportionately impacted by climate change, such as India, the need is even greater. The COP28 climate meeting delivered some important outcomes. A first-time acknowledgement of the need to move away from fossil fuels, a first promise to reduce methane emission, operationalization and capitalization of the Loss and Damage Fund, and an agreement on a framework for the global goal on adaptation. However, like all previous COPs, it still remained an underachiever, unable to measure on the expectations, particularly in galvanizing more ambitious climate action in the immediate term. COP28 was being seen as possibly the last opportunity to ensure that the world had some hopes of keeping within the 1.5 degrees Celsius warming threshold. Hi, my name is Dr. Shruti Sharma, and today I'm going to give you key takeaways of COP28 and highlight key concerns for India. Now, to start with, we need to understand what are COPs. COPs are gathering held within the framework of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, a multinational treaty established in 1992. Now, these meetings, denoted by the acronym COP, serve as the official sessions of the Conference of the Parties. During these sessions, participating countries evaluate global endeavors aligned with the primary goal of the Paris Agreement, aiming to restrict global warming to approximately 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels. The COPs are the main decision-making body of the UNFCCC. They adopt decisions and resolutions on various aspects of climate action, such as mitigation, adaptation, finance, technology, and transparency. Now let's look at the key outcomes of COP28. The first one was Global Stocktake Test. The Global Stocktake is a periodic review mechanism established under the Paris Agreement in 2015. The text proposes 8 steps to keep the global temperature rise within the ambit of 1.5 degrees Celsius. It calls for substantially reducing non-CO2 emissions, including, in particular, methane emissions globally by 2030. Tripling renewable energy capacity globally by 2030 compared to the 2022 level to 11,000 gigawatt, and doubling the global average annual rate of energy efficiency improvement compared to the 2022 level to 4.1% by 2030. The second outcome was transitioning away from fossil fuels. Now, COP28 calls for transitioning away from fossil fuels in energy system in a just, orderly, and equitable manner, accelerating action in this critical decade to achieve net zero by 2050. Earlier points mentioning a phase out of fossil fuels have been removed completely and replaced with reducing fossil fuels with a much relaxed 2050 timeline. Now, language on coal has gone from phase out to phase down, but is still preferable considering the text does not mention oil or gas throughout. Also mentioned are unreliable solutions including nuclear and carbon capture. Now, if the text is accepted within the current language, it gives countries all of these options as a menu to choose from, and it does not take much to identify the ones that will be off the global table first. Now, the third outcome is Global Goal on Adaptation, GGA. This was another important step developing countries had been waiting for. Historically, adaptation hasn't received enough attention or resources as compared with mitigation activities, mainly because adaptation is largely a local endeavor. Its benefits also are mostly local, but developing countries had been arguing that a global framework for adaptation was necessary to bring more attention to it. Accordingly, the Glasgow conference had decided to set up a 2-year work program to define the contours of this framework. The work program resulted in identification of some common adaptation goals, important for the entire world. These included reduction in climate-induced water scarcity, attaining climate resilience in food and agriculture production, supplies and distribution, and resilience against climate-induced health impacts. COP28 adopted the framework, but much more needs to be done on this front, particularly in identifying the indicators to measure progress on each of the global goals. The adaptation agreement currently lacks financial provisions, and countries would need to continue working on it to strengthen it in the coming years. Now, the third very important outcome was on climate finance. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development estimates that wealthy nations owe developing countries $500 billion in 2025 under the new Collective Quantified Goal (NCQG) for climate finance. The goal is to set a new collective quantified goal before 2025. The goal will start from a floor of $100 billion per year. This includes $250 billion for mitigation, $100 billion for adaptation, and $150 billion for loss and damage. Now, looking at loss and damage, which was discussed in COP28, member countries reached an agreement to operationalize the Loss and Damage Fund aimed at compensating countries grappling with climate change impact. A specific percentage is earmarked for least developed countries and small island developing states. The World Bank will oversee the Loss and Damage Fund in the beginning. Now, there were also discussion on Global Renewable and Energy Efficiency Pledge. The pledge stipulates that signatories commit to work together to triple the world's installed renewable energy generation capacity to at least 11,000 gigawatt by 2030. It also calls for collectively double the global average annual rate of energy efficiency improvements from around 2% to over 4% every year until 2030. There was a talk on the Global Cooling Pledge in COP28. Now, the Global Cooling Pledge included 66 national government signatories committed to working together to reduce cooling-related emissions across all sectors by at least 68% globally relative to 2022 levels by 2050. There was a declaration to triple nuclear energy. The declaration launched at COP28 aimed to triple global nuclear energy capacity by 2050. Now, these were the key takeaways for COP28. Now, let's look at the major engagements of India as a country in COP28. The first one was Green Credit Initiative. The Green Credit Initiative has been conceptualized as a mechanism to incentivize voluntary pro-planet actions as an effective response to the challenge of climate change. It envisions the issue of green credits for plantations on waste-degraded lands and river catchment areas to rejuvenate and revive natural ecosystem. The second concern for India is the Phase 2 of Leadership Group for Industry Transition. Now, this focuses on inclusive and just industry transition, co-development and transfer of low-carbon technology and financial support to emerging economies for industry transition. There was discussion on Global River Cities Alliance, GRCA. Now, GRCA was launched at COP28, led by the National Mission for Clean Ganga, NMCG, under the Ministry of Jal Shakti, Government of India. GRCA highlights India's role in sustainable river-centric development and climate resilience. Now, this platform will facilitate knowledge exchange, river city twinning, and dissemination of best practices. There was a Quad Climate Working Group on localized climate action. The event focused on recognizing and amplifying the role of local communities and regional government in supporting sustainable lifestyle. Now let's look at what are the key concerns. Now there are no specific timelines for fossil fuel phase out. The agreement lacked a clear and urgent plan for fossil fuel phase out, using vague language such as transitioning away, without specific timelines or targets. No specified targets on tripling of global renewable energy. The COP28 agreement calls upon countries to contribute to tripling of global installed capacity of renewable energy and doubling of annual improvements in energy efficiency. Now, this tripling is a global target, and it is not incumbent on every country to individually triple its current installed capacity. It is thus not clear how this tripling would be ensured. There were no clear mechanisms for achieving adaptation goals. For developing countries, it was made clear that the adaptation draft fell well below the expectation. There is no mention on how these objectives are to be realized or the mechanisms that will fund these efforts. Lack of accountability on financial commitments seen. There is currently no established mechanism to hold governments and institutions accountable for fulfilling their climate financing commitments. There was a key concern on varying interpretation on climate finance. Data on climate finance flows are compiled using various methodologies and have varying interpretations. Double counting of climate finance can occur when the same funds are reported by multiple parties, leading to an overestimation of the actual financial flow. There was a resistance over the phase down of coal. There was a move to stipulate that no new coal-fired power plants could be opened without an inbuilt carbon capture and storage facility. But this was strongly resisted by India, China, South Africa, and other countries. There was concern over methane emission cuts. The agreement talked about accelerating and substantially reducing non-carbon dioxide emissions globally, including in particular methane emission by 2030. Now, cutting methane emissions could involve tweaking agriculture pattern, which could be extremely sensitive in a country like India. Now, let's look at what should be the way forward. We should commit to climate finance targets. Now, all bilateral donors must live up to their climate finance commitments and set more ambitious targets. The need for integrating climate finance into national development plans and policies is even greater than before. Now, there has to be clear roadmaps and timelines. One needs to develop clear and detailed roadmaps with specific timelines for achieving key milestones and targets. Establishing interim goals that contribute to the overall long-term objective, fostering a sense of accountability. There has to be enhanced National Action Plan or NDCs. We need to revise and strengthen the NDCs to reflect more ambition and concrete climate action targets. NDCs should cover a wide range of sectors, including energy, transportation, agriculture, and industry. There should be legislation and policy support from the respective governments. Enacting and strengthening domestic legislation and policies that support the implementation of climate targets should be there. We need to integrate climate consideration into existing laws and regulations across various sectors. Now, capacity building has to be focused on. We need to invest in capacity building at local, national, and international levels to enhance the ability to implement climate actions effectively. We need to provide training and resources to support technological, financial, and institutional capacity. There has to be international cooperation. Now, one needs to facilitate the transfer of climate-friendly technologies, especially from developed to the developing countries. There has to be shared experiences, lessons learned, and best practices amongst countries to accelerate the adaptation of environment-friendly solutions across industries. COPs are crucial in the battle against climate change, but the road ahead is both challenging and promising. Its success requires collective determination, unwavering commitment, and a recognition that the stakes are high. By embracing determined contributions and forging genuine partnerships, the global community can build a sustainable and resilient future. As we reflect on the key takeaways from COP28, one thing is abundantly clear. The collective will and the determination to combat climate change has never been stronger. Let us join in this journey towards a sustainable future where the lessons learned at COP28 propel us into an era of global cooperation and environmental stewardship. Together, we hold the key to unlocking a brighter and a greener tomorrow. Wishing you all season's greetings and a happy new year. Thank you.